Welcome to Story Vault. Today I've got 5 dramatic Reddit stories. Let's get started. The first story is about a relationship that took an unexpected turn. Boyfriend mad at me because he opened the relationship and got no dates. Am I the asshole for how I responded? Me and my boyfriend, both 37, have been dating for just over 3 years. Prior to this, I was single for 8 years. Overall, it's been a healthy relationship. We are both independent with our jobs, living situations, and so on. I do love spending time with him, and I don't really have any complaints. However, something that startled me was that about 6 months ago, he said he wanted to open the relationship up, meaning going on dates and sleeping with other women. I'd never been in a dynamic like this, so I naturally had a lot of questions. He told me that I could also go on dates and sleep with other men. I was honestly a little skeptical at first, but after doing some research and having time to think, I agreed. He had told me that if at any point I wasn't comfortable, we could stop and close the relationship again. One of the rules was that we don't discuss with each other what we're doing or who we're going on dates with. I signed up for a dating app, and within a few days I had over 500 likes, and it's been pretty steady since. So I started matching with people, texting, and arranging dates. On average, I go on 1 or 2 dates a month. There are also some people in similar open relationship dynamics that I'm going on dates with and sleeping with regularly. I quite like the fact that everything is non-committal, so even though I was skeptical at first, I'm enjoying the open relationship. As decided beforehand, I hadn't told my boyfriend about any of this. I was at my boyfriend's house the other day and my phone was on the kitchen counter. He saw my notifications and then proceeded to go through my phone and read messages, including going through the dating app and everything else. To say he was angry would be an understatement. It turns out he opened the relationship because he wanted to take a younger colleague from his workplace out on a date. She misread his idea of a date as just a work lunch. He then openly told me that he wanted to see if it would work with her so he could ultimately leave me for her. However, she didn't want him, and it seems like no one else did either. In the last 6 months, he's had a few rough dates but no one else to sleep with. I feel somewhat embarrassed for him. He demanded that we instantly close the relationship, and I told him that maybe we should just end things, or at least take a break. He was outraged and called me names, but he was the one who wanted this dynamic, so what's the problem? I left, and as I walked home I contemplated fully breaking it off with him. He's been blowing up my phone, and I'm not quite sure what to say. Am I the asshole? That situation escalated faster than anyone expected. Now, let's move on to the next story. The next story is about boundaries being pushed too far. Am I the asshole for telling my wife that I'm ending our marriage because I found her brother at our house, again, and said it in front of him? I'm a 38-year-old man, and I left my wife, Kelly, who is also 38, today. We were together for 5 years and married for 4. I have battled her lack of boundaries with her family for the past 2 years. I understand that they are very close-knit, but she never paid attention to how their dynamics affected our relationship. I experienced every, just no family, situation you can imagine. My food was eaten, they showed up uninvited, meddling happened constantly, you name it. 9 months ago, my mother-in-law and father-in-law began divorce proceedings. He cheated, fell madly in love with a side chick he's lived with for the past 15 years, and decided he wanted to get remarried. He kicked everyone out of the house. It was an emergency, so I agreed to help out, and I so deeply regret it. I had to take in 4 people, and they couldn't even try to avoid constantly pissing me off. I got sick of finding them using our private bathroom, even though they had full access to the other bathroom in the hallway. My sister-in-law started taking naps on our bed, which felt creepy because a bed is too personal. I once came home late and had to wake her up, then wait for her to snap out of her groggy state so she could leave. They stayed for 3 months, but the problems never stopped. No matter how many times I told my wife, and even told them directly, they still showed up at random hours. Even if I didn't run into them, I knew she was letting them come over. I hated their presence. They ate my snacks, sat on my expensive recliner that they never contributed a penny toward, and they picked my small orchard completely empty. Things got so tense that I finally blew up at her in front of them. They left, we fought, and I ended up sleeping in a hotel. I warned her many times that I was fed up and needed her support. She acted like I was asking her to abandon her family. Today, I came home to find her brother's car blocking the entrance. Not parked on the side, not in the driveway, just right in the middle, so my only option was to drive onto the lawn. I went inside and found him lying on the couch with his shoes on. He gave me this smug smile, like he was untouchable. I went straight to our bedroom, packed as many of my belongings as I could, and ignored her pleas to talk. There's nothing left to talk about. I've already called a few lawyers but haven't heard back yet. She cried, but at this point I feel no empathy. I don't know if I overreacted or if this should have been discussed privately. I feel defeated, angry, and I hate her family with everything in me. They knew they were hurting our relationship and didn't care. She knew I'm a private person who hates being invaded. I helped them because I love her and didn't have the heart to let them sleep in their car. We don't have kids, but there are so many things that will be left undone. I loved her deeply, but I just can't do this anymore. She called me immediately after I left, and I told her my decision is final. She sounded shaken, but I told her that right now I despise her and will never be able to sleep next to her again. Sorry for any typos. I have a migraine and just needed to ask whether leaving the way I did made me an asshole, and if I should have waited until her brother was gone before saying I was ending the marriage. Situations like this rarely feel simple for anyone involved. Now, let's move on to the next story. This next one is about confronting public humiliation head-on. Am I the asshole for embarrassing my husband's co-worker for embarrassing me and my husband? A few months ago, after many years of trying to conceive, my husband, who is 32, and I, who am 33, had a gorgeous, healthy baby boy. My husband and I are black, which is relevant to this story. We were over the moon, and family, friends, and co-workers were excited for us too. Right after I delivered, my husband emailed the birth announcement with a photo of our son to everyone in his office. A couple of weeks later, my husband came home furious after his first day back at work. One of his co-workers told him that another guy in the office, a new and much younger employee my husband barely knew, had been telling anyone who would listen that my husband couldn't be our son's father. According to him, the baby was too light-skinned and his hair was too long and straight. He claimed it had to be a white or Asian man's baby. He went on to tell people that my husband was a sucker and that his excitement about becoming a dad blinded him to the fact that I must have cheated on him. As a side note for anyone still unaware, in 2025, black babies are often fairly pale at birth, and their skin darkens over the first few weeks. Hair texture changes gradually too. Our son was no exception and is now my husband's mini-me. My husband confronted the guy immediately. The co-worker denied everything and claimed he was just joking, saying the baby was too cute to be my husband's. However, multiple people in the office confirmed what he had actually said. On top of that, he tried to turn his so-called perception skills into some strange form of workplace clout. Fortunately, he was moved to a different shift that same week, so my husband didn't have to see him again. That is, until a company event this past weekend. Families were invited, and we brought our son. While we were chatting with the boss, that same co-worker inserted himself into our group, interrupted the conversation, and introduced himself to the boss. When I realized who he was, all of my anger came rushing back. I said, "I don't believe we've met, but aren't you the guy who went around telling everyone in the office that I must have cheated on my husband with a white or Asian man and that this couldn't be his son?" He went red and completely silent. The boss looked at him and said, "See me in my office first thing Monday," then walked away. I think someone may be getting fired. My husband said I went too far and that it was already over and done with. I told him it wasn't done for me until I had my say, and that I was the one being defamed, not him. Am I the asshole? This one clearly landed very differently depending on who you ask. Now, let's move on to the next story. The next story is about conflict in a public setting. Am I the asshole for kicking an autistic child out of my restaurant for misbehaving? My name is Gina. I'm 55, from upstate New York, and I run a family-owned pizzeria. My husband and I have been in the service industry for decades, and over the past few years we've noticed a huge increase in rude customers, rude children, and an extreme level of entitlement. One of the rules in our restaurant is that nobody is allowed to talk on speakerphone, play music out loud, or have anything playing on speaker from a personal device. It's a simple request and something that used to be standard. Before the pandemic, this wasn't even an issue. Now, parents act offended if their children can't watch Bluey at full volume. We have signs up and we enforce this rule politely but firmly. A few weeks ago, a woman was sitting with her 9-year-old son, who was watching cartoons on a tablet at full volume while also scrolling TikTok on a phone. I calmly explained that this wasn't allowed because it disrupts other customers and asked her to turn the volume off. She replied rudely that her son has both ADHD and autism and needs this to sit quietly. I asked if he could use headphones, and she snapped that he doesn't like them. I told her that this wasn't acceptable and that she needed to either use headphones or silence the devices. About 10 minutes later, I was in the kitchen and heard loud banging from the dining room. I came out to find the child slamming his fists on the table while the mom ignored him. It almost felt like he was waiting for her to say something, but she didn't. I asked her to stop him, and she said this was just his normal behavior when he didn't have a device. The boy then stood up and started running around the restaurant, punching and kicking tables and chairs, knocking things over. Another customer yelled at the mom to control her kid or they would. The woman launched into what sounded like a rehearsed speech about how autistic children deserve to exist in public spaces. I agree with that, but everyone still needs to behave appropriately. I told her that if she couldn't get her son under control, she needed to leave. She became furious and yelled that it's illegal to discriminate against people on the spectrum and that she would report me. My husband came out, packed her food into a to-go box, and firmly told her to leave immediately. She looked shocked and said kids shouldn't be expected to sit quietly and that the world needs to be more accepting of differences. I love kids. My husband and I raised 5 of them, including one with special needs. But autism or not, nothing gives someone the right to behave like that in a public place. If your child cannot sit in a restaurant without a device and has extreme reactions, then maybe reconsider bringing them there. I'm tired of rude kids and parents who refuse to set boundaries. This isn't about ADHD or autism. It's about entitlement, bad parenting, and the behavior that comes from it. Am I the asshole? This last story is especially heavy and difficult to process. Now, let's move on to the final story. The final story is about grief, memory, and loss. Am I the asshole for ignoring my wife for throwing away my late wife videotapes? I'm writing this because I truly don't know what to do. I have a daughter with my late wife. Her name is Eleanor, and she's turning 18 in 2 weeks. My late wife, Chloe, and I started dating in college. We eventually got married, and after our wedding she told me she was pregnant. We were thrilled. Since it was our first child, we bought a video camera and recorded little tapes throughout her pregnancy. Simple moments like joking around, having lunch, and talking to our unborn child on camera. We promised ourselves we wouldn't show the tapes to Eleanor until her 18th birthday. 2 years after Eleanor was born, Chloe died in a car accident caused by a drunk driver while she was coming home from her mother's house. I was devastated and fell into a deep depression while raising our 2-year-old daughter alone. Friends encouraged me to date again, but every time I tried, I felt like I was betraying Chloe. Years later, when Eleanor was 13, I met Wendy at my sister's birthday gathering. We connected immediately. She didn't mind that I had a daughter, as she had 2 kids herself and had recently gone through a divorce. 2 years after we married, we reach the present. Eleanor's 18th birthday is approaching, and I've kept the tapes all these years for this moment. She doesn't remember her mother's voice or touch, and I was excited to finally show her. A week ago, I mentioned the tapes to Wendy, and I noticed her expression change from happy to uncomfortable. Wendy often gets uneasy when I talk about Chloe. I never compare them or say things like I wish she were more like Chloe. I only talk about her to help my daughter understand what her mother was like. Wendy has told me she feels sad that she can never be like Chloe. Chloe was a model who later worked in fashion, and while she was very beautiful, Wendy has said she isn't in the best shape after having kids. I love them both for who they are and have never had a preference, but I feel Wendy has developed jealousy toward Chloe. I reassured Wendy that I love her as she is, and she broke down crying. The next day, she apologized for how she acted. I told her it was okay, hugged her, and kissed her forehead. She asked where the tapes were, and I showed her the box in my closet. Yesterday morning, I went to find the tapes so I could put them in a nicer box for my daughter. The box was gone. I searched everywhere before finding Wendy on the couch watching TV. When I asked her about it, she calmly said she threw them away. My heart dropped. She said I talk about Chloe too much and need to move on, and that throwing them away was a head start. I was furious. Not only did she throw away what little I had left of Chloe, but she destroyed my daughter's biggest surprise. We argued, and she started apologizing when she saw how upset I was. I broke down crying and locked myself in the bedroom. Now I'm sitting in my office searching my computer for any old files or videos of Chloe to give to my daughter. Sometimes Eleanor still cries because she never got to meet her mother, and I thought this would help. I've been ignoring Wendy for a day now. She's been texting nonstop, and even our mutual friends are telling me to accept her apology and move on since Chloe died over 10 years ago. They don't understand what it's like to lose someone that close. I'm trying to recover these files, and I'm starting to wonder if I overreacted. I don't know what to do, and I really need help. Situations like this rarely feel simple for anyone involved. That's all for today's stories. Now it's your turn. Rank these stories from most justified to least justified. I'm curious how you'd order them, and why. Subscribe for more stories like this.